Snow fell thick and slow that evening, tumbling down through the black pines and whispering over the silent valley below. The light was fading fast, and the wind carried the smell of smoke from Cinder Creek, a small town tucked against the mountain's shadow, where most folks were already home, shutters closed, and lamps glowing warm behind frosted glass. No one sane was still out in that cold. No one but Jonas Callahan, the man they called the Mountain Beast. He moved like part of the forest itself, boots crunching softly over the snow, coat heavy with frost. His breath steamed through his beard, white in the dying light. The old Winchester slung over his shoulder was more habit than weapon. The mountains had their dangers, but none so sharp as loneliness. He'd long ago made peace with that, or so he told himself. Jonas had spent most of his life alone, tucked away in a cabin he built with his own hands higher up the ridge. The last time he'd come into town, children had hidden behind their mothers, peeking out with wide eyes. He'd overheard the whispers, that he was cursed, that the scars on his face came from the devil himself. The truth was simpler and sadder. Years ago, a bear had mauled him deep in the timberlands, and though he'd lived, the wound had never healed right. His face bore the memory, a twisted reminder that beauty was not for men like him. Still, he came down every few weeks for supplies. Flour, coffee, sometimes tobacco, though he didn't smoke much anymore. He kept his head down, said little, and left before nightfall. That day was no different, until he heard the sound. At first it was faint, swallowed by the wind, a sharp, panicked cry that made him stop mid-step. He listened, head cocked, every instinct sharpening. It came again, a woman's voice, thin and frightened, carried from somewhere down the slope. Without hesitation, Jonas turned toward it, plunging off the trail through snow up to his knees. Branches clawed at his coat as he pushed through the trees, following the sound until he came upon a small clearing. There, half buried under the weight of snow, lay a broken carriage. One of the horses was gone, its tracks leading off into the trees. The other lay trembling, still harnessed, its flanks steaming in the cold. The wheel had shattered against a hidden stone, and from inside the overturned carriage came a weak, muffled sob. Jonas dropped his pack, bent low, and peered through the broken door. A woman was trapped inside, her hair tangled, her fine coat torn, one gloved hand clutching at a broken board. Her face was pale, eyes wide and glassy with cold and fear. "Easy," he said, voice deep and rough but gentle. "Don't move, you're gonna make it worse." The woman startled, twisting toward the sound. "Who's there? Please, please help me." "I will," he said, already moving closer. "Hold still." He gripped the broken doorframe and heaved it aside with one powerful pull. The wood groaned, snow spilling into the carriage. Jonas reached in, careful not to touch her too suddenly. "You hurt bad." I don't think so. My ankle." She tried to move, and a sharp cry escaped her lips. Jonas grimaced. "Yeah, twisted or broke. Either way, you ain't walkin'." She looked up then, her gaze landing full on him for the first time. He saw the flicker of fear, that brief flash when her eyes traced the scars on his cheek, the uneven skin. He'd seen that look 1,000 times. It still stung, but he didn't show it. "Don't be scared," he said softly. "You're safe." Her lips trembled. "Who are you?" "Name's Jonas. I live up the mountain a ways." He knelt beside her, big hands surprisingly careful as he freed her trapped foot from the tangle of fabric. She gasped as he lifted her, but he moved slowly, mindful of every flinch. When he stood, she was light in his arms, lighter than she should have been, like she hadn't eaten properly in days. "You'll freeze if we stay," he said. "There's a cabin a mile from here. You'll rest there till the storm lets up." You have a cabin?" He nodded once. "Only place close enough to keep you alive tonight." Her lips parted as if to protest, but the wind howled then, and the decision was made for her. The cold bit through even his coat. She wouldn't survive an hour out here. Jonas shifted her weight carefully, tucking her against his chest as he turned back into the forest. She clung to him instinctively, her breath warm against his neck. For a while, neither spoke. Only the sound of his steady footsteps and the distant creak of trees under snow filled the silence. After a long time, she whispered, "You didn't have to help me." Jonas gave a short, quiet huff. "Didn't much think about it. I thought." She hesitated, choosing her words. "I thought I was going to die out here." "You ain't dead yet," he said simply. "That's something." The wind whipped harder as they climbed higher, snowflakes clinging to his beard. His breath came in heavy clouds, but he didn't slow. Each step was deliberate, sure-footed. The forest thinned, opening to a small ridge where a lone cabin sat half-buried beneath snowdrifts, smoke still curling faintly from the chimney. Jonas shifted her in his arms and nudged the door open with his shoulder. The room inside was small but solid, smelling of cedar and pine pitch. A low fire smoldered in the hearth, casting a dim orange glow across rough-hewn walls. He laid her gently on a pile of blankets near the fire. "Stay still," he said. "Gonna stoke it up." He knelt by the hearth, feeding kindling and logs until flames leapt high. The warmth spread quickly, chasing the chill from the air. When he turned back, the woman was watching him, still wary, but less afraid now. "Thank you," she said softly. He shrugged, hanging her wet coat near the fire. "Wouldn't sit right leaving you out there." She studied him quietly, eyes tracing the lines of his face. "They told me about a man who lived up here," she murmured. "Said he was dangerous. Said no one ever came back from his cabin." The sun rose pale over the snow-blanketed ridges, soft gold spilling across the valley as the storm finally broke. The air outside the cabin was still, hushed, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Inside, the fire had burned low but steady, casting a warm glow across the rough-hewn room. Jonas Callahan sat in the same chair he'd been in all night, half dozing, one hand resting on his knee, the other near his rifle, old habits from a life spent too long alone in wild places. The soft sound of movement pulled him from his thoughts. Eliza stirred beneath the heavy blanket, her hair loose around her face, her eyes fluttering open with a faint, sleepy sigh. For a moment, she looked disoriented, then she saw the cabin walls, the flickering light, and him sitting across from her. "You stayed up all night," she murmured, her voice low, husky from sleep. "Didn't have much choice," Jonas said, his voice rough as gravel. "Fire needed keepin'. You needed watchin'." A small smile touched her lips. "You didn't have to." He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Wouldn't have felt right sleepin' while you were hurt." When she tried to sit up, pain flickered across her face, and she winced, gripping her ankle. Jonas was beside her before she could say a word, crouching down to check the bandage he'd tied the night before. His touch was steady, gentle despite his large, scarred hands. "It's swollen some," he said quietly. "But you'll walk on it soon enough." Eliza nodded, watching him. There was something strange about this man, rough, unpolished, yet there was a care in his every move that didn't match the stories folks told about him. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Been that way near 10 years now." "Why?" Jonas hesitated, then sat back on his heels. "Guess I just fit better up here than down there." He nodded toward the valley below, where the faint smoke from Cinder Creek rose through the trees. "Folks like me don't make good company for townsfolk." "You mean because of your face?" she said softly, instantly regretting it. His jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't harden. "Yeah," he said simply. "That, and 'cause I got tired of looking at the way they looked at me." Eliza's heart clenched. "They're fools," she whispered. Jonas didn't answer, but the faintest flicker of surprise passed through his eyes. He turned away, pretending to check the fire. "You're hungry," he said after a long pause. "I'll fix something." He moved about the cabin with quiet efficiency, setting a pan over the fire and slicing strips of dried venison. The smell filled the small room, rich and savory. Eliza watched him, noticing the way his shoulders filled his shirt, the strength in his movements, the patience of a man who had long learned to rely on himself. When he handed her a plate, their fingers brushed again. She looked up at him, searching his face. "You built all this?" "Every log," he said. "Didn't have much else to do back then." "It's beautiful," she said softly. He gave a short, rough laugh. "Ain't nobody called it that before." "I mean it," she insisted. "It feels safe here." Jonas blinked, unsure how to answer that. He'd never thought of the cabin as anything but a place to hide, a shelter from a world that didn't want him. But the way she said it, the way her voice softened, it made the air feel different somehow. They ate in silence for a while. Outside, sunlight melted the snow from the pines, sending small avalanches tumbling down their branches. Every now and then, Eliza glanced toward the window, her expression clouded. "You said you were heading to the valley," Jonas said finally. "What for?" Her fork paused midair. "I was supposed to marry someone there," she said. "A rancher named Dale Carver. My uncle arranged it." Jonas nodded slowly. "And you don't sound too fond of it." She set the fork down. "I never met him, but my uncle said it was my only chance. I lost my parents last year." There's not much left for me anywhere else. Jonas looked at her for a long time. He sounded like the kind of man who'd treat you right. Eliza gave a small, bitter smile. My uncle said he was rich. That ain't the same thing, Jonas muttered. Silence settled again, heavier this time. The fire popped softly. Eliza looked down at her hands, then back at him. Do you ever wish you had someone? She asked suddenly. A family, a wife. Jonas's throat worked before he answered. Used to, but that was a long time ago. World decided that wasn't in the cards for me. Maybe the world was wrong, she said quietly. He looked at her then, really looked. Her eyes caught the firelight, deep brown and steady, not flinching from his scars. For a moment, the air between them felt charged, like the quiet after lightning. Then Jonas broke the gaze, rubbing a hand over his jaw.